and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation today. It's hard to know what to make of what's going on with this missing airplane. I mean, there are an abundance of theories about what happened to that airplane. One of the latest realities that has surfaced is that the senior pilot was a fanatical political activist, and he was obsessed. I mean, this is the word that's used in some of the media accounts. He was an obsessive supporter of the leader of the political opposition in Malaysia. And this leader of the opposition party in Malaysia was sentenced to 5 years in prison the day that the flight departed from Malaysia. So this opposition leader is sentenced in the afternoon. The plane takes off that very same night. And the senior pilot, the Sahari fella, he was at the trial. He was there when this man was sentenced. And we are told that he is an obsessive, fanatical supporter and follower of this leader of the political opposition. And the leader of the opposition was sentenced to prison, by the way, for violating Malaysia's law against homosexuality. Now, this creates the policy, the possibility, this was some kind of gigantic pro-homosexual protest. He was going to take 239 people to the bottom of the sea because he was against any kind of public policy that would be set against the normalcy of homosexuality. Maybe that's what it was about, or it was just some kind of a political process. If he thought that this homosexuality charge was just a trumped-up deal, there wasn't any foundation to it, maybe this is in the form of a political protest. So anyway, we don't know. We do now know that there were 634 different airports, minimum. 634 is the minimum number of places where this plane could have been landed. There were some erratic movements to the plane, which indicate maybe there was some kind of struggle in the cockpit. Maybe the senior pilot's taking it over. The co-pilot, the younger guy, maybe he tries to contest him for it while they're grappling for control of the airplane. It takes these erratic moves. But we know that the air control in Malaysia believed that the last words that were spoken by the co-pilot, by the younger guy, very calm, good night, kind of see you later type of message, very routine. And this was after the communication devices had been turned off. The transponder, which communicates directly to the ground, this ACARS, which beams satellite signals up and then they go back down, all those had been turned off before the last verbal communication, which would be an indication that there wasn't any conflict at that point in the cockpit. If the co-pilot is verbalizing this, and he's apparently not under any sort of distress. So anyway, just a whole lot of questions about what happened here. In one of the flight corridors they could have taken, could have gone to Pakistan. Remember, one of the early theories that surfaced was that this plane had been hijacked to be used as a guided missile, as a human guided missile. Fly it somewhere, take the passengers off, load it up with explosives, fly it into a building. And now there are some Muslim activists in Malaysia that are saying that Al-Qaeda had been planning the hijack of a Malaysian aircraft for some time. Now, again, I'm not saying this ought to be the leading theory, but this is a fact that there is evidence of a plot by Muslims to hijack a passenger plane from Malaysia or in Malaysia in a 9/11 style attack. There's an Al-Qaeda informant who told a court last week, this is just last week now, that 4 to 5 Malaysian men had been planning to take control of a plane using a bomb hidden in a shoe to blow open the cockpit door. So how do you get into the cockpit? They're all locked up. You put a bomb in your shoe, detonate the bomb against the cockpit door, boom, you're inside. Now, this guy was a defendant when the original shoe bomber, Richard Reed, was convicted. Remember, he tried to light his shoe bomb on fire, couldn't do it. They apprehended him, and now he's in prison. This guy was his accomplice in that effort. So he knows all about shoe bombs on airplanes. The security experts said that the evidence from this convicted British terrorist was credible. The informant, they call him a supergrass. I don't know what that word means. I'm just going to call him an informant. The informant said that he had met the Malaysian jihadists, one of whom was a pilot in Afghanistan, and given them a shoe bomb to use to take control of an aircraft. Possibility of such a plot hatched by the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks on the Twin Towers in New York. So the guy that was behind this plot to hijack a Malaysian airliner is the same guy, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, is the same guy that plotted and planned the 9/11 attack, and he was behind this Malaysian hijack attack. In evidence in court last Tuesday, Saad Badat, a British-born Muslim from Gloucester, notice that, British-born Muslim. So this guy's homegrown, and he wanted to blow up an airplane with a shoe bomb with fellow citizens from the United Kingdom on board. I mean, if this doesn't tell us that we need to do some rethinking about immigration from Islamic countries, about the kind of indoctrination that we are allowing through mosques and Muslim student associations here in the United States. I mean, this threat now is growing from within through American converts to Islam, who tend to be more radical, by the way, than longtime Islamists. So this is a British-born Muslim from Gloucester named Badat, said that he had been instructed at a terrorist training camp in Afghanistan to give a shoe bomb to the Malaysians. Giving evidence at the trial in New York of Suleiman Abu Ghaith, Obama bin Laden's son-in-law, Badat said, quote, "I gave one of my shoes to the Malaysians. I think it was to access the cockpit." Now, this is before all this happened. Badat, who spoke via video link and is in hiding in the UK because he doesn't want his fellow Muslims to come after him, said the Malaysian plot was being masterminded by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the principal architect of 9/11. Badat told the court last week that he believed the Malaysians, including the pilot, were ready to perform an act, end quote. Badat, who was jailed for 13 years in 2005 for his part in a conspiracy with the shoe bomber Richard Reed to blow up a transatlantic jet, had given similar evidence in 2012. Thus, his claims were first made long before the disappearance of this Malaysian airliner. Peter King, who heads up the Homeland Security Committee in the House of Representatives and is pretty good on the whole issue of jihad, said he thinks it's possible this whole thing was a suicide plot. Now, one of the things, by the way, if there's any credence to the shoe bomb plot, it does create the possibility you might have a United Airlines Flight 93 scenario here, where maybe the shoe bomb is used to storm the cockpit, and then either the co-pilot or members of the crew or passengers on board the plane decide that they're going to do a Todd Beamer let's roll thing, and they say, like, we are not going to let these guys fly this plane into a building. And so there's some kind of a tussle in the cockpit, and maybe the plane goes down in the Indian Ocean or wherever because there were individuals on board that simply were not going to let that plane be taken over and used for terrorist purposes. Now, Peter King thinks this could be a suicide thing. This seems pretty far-fetched to me, pretty much of a stretch. But he said one possibility that apparently they are looking at is that one of the pilots, either the pilot or the co-pilot, planned to commit suicide but wanted to do it in a way that they wouldn't be able to prove that it was suicide, because if they prove that it's suicide, then his family is not able to claim his life insurance. So the theory out there now is that one of these pilots flew this plane. It was a suicide mission, but he wanted to do it in such a way that there would be no evidence, there would be no way to prove it's suicide, so that his family would be able to collect on the life insurance. Now, the problem with that is I just don't see any evidence from any of the press reports I've read that either one of these men was suicidal. I mean, the older pilot had a wife and 3 kids. She apparently left their family compound the day before this plane took off, and I haven't read anything about where she is. So that's something that is possibly suspicious. And the senior pilot, the one that was the fanatical supporter of this political opponent that went to prison on a homosexuality charge, one of the last pictures taken of him, he had a T-shirt wearing the slogan, "Democracy is dead." And so again, that would cycle back to the fact that this takeover, it would have been hijacked because he was the pilot. He just took it over and might have done it as a form of political protest. So again, all that is to say there's just a lot of questions now that we really don't have any answer for. And, maybe a lot of these questions we are never going to know the answer to some of these questions. And at the least we can say at this point, we can be glad that there was clearly has been some kind of plot. And maybe if this wasn't it, maybe that plot is still being hatched out there in Malaysia. Maybe there's still this group of Muslim fundamentalists in Malaysia that have this shoe bomb. Maybe that shoe bomb that this guy gave to the jihadists, maybe it wasn't used in this deal. So maybe there's still another plot in place that's going to be hatched at some point in the near future to hijack a Malaysian airliner and use it for nefarious purposes. Anyway, all of that is to say we're really kind of flying blind to coin a figure of speech. And, at this point, with no evidence of the plane, I think it's pretty hard to think that this thing did not go down in the ocean somewhere with all souls on board, which would be a horrible tragedy, particularly, it's a tragedy anyway, but it's worse if it wasn't just some accident, if instead it represented some kind of evil intentions and actions on the part of those who took control of the plane. Now, when we come back, we are going to talk to Kevin Sorbo. He is an actor that you may be more familiar with as the man who played Hercules for a number of years, and he'll be our guest. He is the star of a brand new movie called God's Not Dead. This is a movie that premieres this Friday night, March 21st. We want to urge you to see it. It's a family-friendly picture. It's packed with a lot of truth. So it'll not be just good entertainment, but you'll also learn some things that will help you in defending the faith. So it's all about a college freshman by the name of Josh Wheaton who goes up against an unbelieving philosophy professor played by Kevin Sorbo. We'll be right back to talk to him about this new movie. Stay with us, Focal Point AFR Talk.